Sweet surrender as I love, serve, and remember.
So our Sunday topic today is divine antenna. And it aligns with what Reverend Harriet, as our founder and senior minister, has been talking about for the month of March, of the call of creative delight and power. For when we're feeling that divine power is when we have this antenna fully extended. And when we don't, that signal just isn't coming in. You know, we talk often about feeling connected to spirit. Well, spirit's always there, right? There's no real change in the connection. What changes is in the receptor. So this divine antenna, we are the ones that are in choice of whether it's all the way up or all the way down. You know, I think of my old car that had one of those retractable antennas. And when I had it fully up, then I was getting all my wonderful music stations, and I loved it. At the car wash, though, my antenna, I actually had to untwist it, right, and put it in the glove compartment while I went through the car wash, and then coming out, I had to put it back on. Well, those who've had those kinds of cars, remember, if you forgot and you turned on the radio, there was no signal. You got garbled. And that's what I personally feel when I'm not connected. It's a garbling, it's a jumbling. It's like, what's going on? I know there's something more that I have felt, that I often feel, that I'm usually feeling. But at that particular moment, my antenna is totally collapsed. You know, this was so true for me recently when I had my shoulder surgery. And they actually replaced the shoulder. It's a little ball and socket arrangement. And when I went back to the doctor after 2 weeks, 2-week follow-up, he said, when a doctor shakes his head like that, it's not going to be good. It's not going to be good. It appears that the ball had actually separated from the socket, and I had to go in for a second surgery. I started to cry. Right at that moment, it was just, no, this isn't happening to me. Not to me. I was raised Christian Science. We don't believe in sickness, so I never get sick. I'm a religious scientist. I'm a minister. I pray daily. I meditate daily. I had my prayer team working on it. I had different prayer partners working on it. There's no way that I could be going in for a second surgery. And I was in this state of denial, and even deeper than denial was despair. It was like, no, this can't be happening to me. And that particular day, within hours of getting the notice from the doctor that I had to reschedule, go in for second surgery, was our prayer team meeting here at the Lighthouse. And of course, I'd been working with Harriet throughout the day, and she said, let's all, put in a prayer, of our prayer team for Kathy. Kathy, do you want to tell people what's going on? Tears just started all up again. I hadn't completely processed what was going on and was still hurting, emotionally as well as the physical pain. And as I'm preparing this talk, I said, my antenna collapsed, right? It was like it had been unscrewed from the car and I was just getting garbled. I was not feeling the connection. And that was when it is important for each and every one of us to turn to the sources we have in our lives. The prayer team here at Livermore, our own prayer partners, our own prayer practices. What I was finding, though, is that I couldn't quiet my mind, right? That little monkey mind out there was just going on about all of the problems, all of the fears, all of the stuff that I didn't want to think about. There's a book out there by Joel Goldsmith called The Art of Spiritual Healing. And he talks about that quiet mind, the need to actually have it. And what he says, in stillness and in silence shall be our strength, not in speech. Speech is our human way of interpreting divine ideas. But divine ideas express and manifest themselves within us, without words. When I read that, I realized how much I had been talking about the pain. Oh my goodness, poor me, I have to go for a second surgery, and telling anyone who would listen my sad story. And I said, this isn't giving space for the divine to come to me, for the divine to be heard. So I stopped talking. You know, the Tao that Sandy so beautifully read for us today, it's all about the stillness. You know, nature has its tempest and then quiets down. And it's in that stillness that we experience our own healing, our own divinity, our own wholeness, instead of coming from the brokenness. You know, I realized too when I did stop talking that where my thoughts were taking me was not to the connection to the divine. It was settling on the brokenness, right? It was coming from fear. Fear that the second surgery would be no more successful than the first surgery. Fear that the effects of the anesthetic that I was just starting to come out of after a couple of weeks would come back even stronger by having a second surgery. Fear, honestly, my own mortality, right? And I was letting all of those fears shadow the divine part of me that is perfect, that is whole, that is complete, that is not broken, that does not know pain, does not know sorrow. And I had to make that conscious choice to move out of fear, to recognize something bigger than myself, to raise my spiritual antenna, my divine antenna, to get more of that signal that was always there, never went away. You stop and think of the airwaves of our radio. They're out there right now. We don't see them, but they're there. And it's our antenna that brings them in to us. And as I was working through the fear, I remembered that I had set myself an intention for 2025. Every year I set my own personal intention to trust in spirit. Be careful what you ask for. What better opportunity did I have to just back away from my humanness and give everything to God? To let go. To stop that control of my egoic self that thinks I can do everything. So I did. I mean, thank goodness for this community, for our teachings, for the spirit within me that came through. But it did have to have that moment of despair. It's like the levels of consciousness that Reverend Harriet has talked to us so much about. I was in that first level of consciousness, to me, victim. Why is this happening? I did everything right. Oh, poor me. Where I did not take control of my own life. I did not feel that I had the ability to do anything at that moment. But when I remembered my goal of trusting in spirit. And I had to honestly ask myself, am I? I wasn't. So I moved into, fortunately, the second level of consciousness, which is by me. This is where we all begin to take a little bit of control back in our lives and say, I can do this. With the God in me, I can do this. I made my affirmations. I did my prayers. I was able to move deeper into meditation. I was able to fully embody this whole by me consciousness. It's also known as the individual creative. Now, the third level of consciousness is the co-creative level, through me, where I'm not in control. I know who's really got this. I am the hands and feet of the divine who is operating through my physical body to manifest into this form. That's the beautiful third level of consciousness, the co-creative level. And when we reach the fourth level, that's the as me, where it's not even hands and feet of God. I am divine. I am a spiritual being put on this earth to have a spiritual experience and a human experience. I am the oneness. And you know, it's in meditation that many of us get to that deeper sense of oneness. They actually did a study a while ago with some Buddhist monks from a monastery who typically spent half of their day in meditation. And they brought them all into a laboratory and put their funny little hats on it with the electrodes all over. And they were measuring, here's your feeling center, and here's your thinking center, and here's your sense of self. And then they asked them to go into meditation, which, of course, being professionals, they could do in any environment. Didn't matter lab or not, silly hat or not. And they were able to chart what was going on in the brain. So when they first started meditating, they could see the lights shining in the various elements of the brain. And the sense of self was showing up as a bright green. But as the monks got deeper into meditation, that color started to grow dimmer and dimmer and take up less and less place of the brain as these monks started to get deeper into the sense of oneness. Their own sense of self just naturally dissipated, and they were at one with the world. Isn't that beautiful? Meditation works. That's the actual science that's behind it. And in order to get to that deeper level, needs silence. My talking about my pain was not serving me, was not bringing me a healing. I needed to be silent. Ernest Holmes, as the founder of religious science, asked the question in his book, Questions and Answers on the Science of Mind, what is meant by silence? It is a contemplation in the quiet of the mind when the objective tumult is temporarily stilled and we rise in our consciousness to that place of pure causation, which is spirit. I love that phrase, objective tumult is temporarily stilled. Because that's what happens in life, isn't it? That this tumult of our lives just takes over. And there's sometimes just so little opportunities for quiet. It's in those moments of tumult that I find myself needing to consciously bring myself to the place of stillness. The prayer team helps. My meditation, my own prayers, my prayer partners. We have a tremendous amount of tools that we can use to take us to that deeper place. As Ernest Holmes says, to rise in consciousness to the place of pure causation that is spirit. And I recognized when I was doing my prayers that I was coming from effect, right? This was all about healing the shoulder. What I really needed to do was to bring my consciousness to a healing consciousness. Because that's where we know everything starts from thought. So as I changed my thinking, I did indeed change my life. And it was that shift, just small shift, from healing the shoulder in my prayers to healing my consciousness, that made a difference. Even in navigation, they talk about 1 degree change in navigation. It would be the equivalent if they didn't make those navigational shifts. A flight from San Francisco to Washington, D.C. gets there perfectly on time when the navigator does their small 1 degree shifts throughout the 6-hour flight. If they did not, they'd end up in Baltimore, Maryland, 42 miles away. It's 1 degree. That's all any of us needs to shift. Just 1 small degree. So being the ones that are in control, being the ones at choice, we get to choose to make that navigational shift, to move our thinking from where we don't want it to be, where it is not serving us, to where it does. To be able to unite with that oneness. Ernest Holmes again says in How to Change Your Life, when you feel intimately and deeply that nothing separates you from God, you feel a great sense of satisfaction, peace, strength, and freedom come over you that no one who has not chosen to ascend to that higher consciousness could ever have. So we wrap up today's talk and consciously extend our own antenna. Come back to the Tao and feel the stillness of life. Operate from that 4th level of consciousness as me, letting the divine be that which guides each and every one of us. And know that all of us cycle through all levels of consciousness. Honor each one as it shows up for you, knowing that in the right time, the right place, it will move when it's ready to move. And it's those small navigational changes which allows each of us to move our own consciousness to something that is greater. It's when we quiet that tumult in our lives to be still and to know God. Let us pray. As I take a moment of stillness, just feeling the presence, knowing the divine in me, knowing myself as a part of the whole, as each and every one in this room is a part of this divine whole. We each have our own personal navigating systems, where we're able to make those 1-degree shifts that bring us deeper and deeper to the sense of stillness. For it is only in the stillness that we hear that still, small voice that whispers, "I love you." And so I say thank you, Spirit, for all of the gifts that have been given to each and every one of us in this room, online, and in the world, that we are all able to honor the divine within, the God within, and know ourselves to be whole. I say thank you, Spirit, and invite you all to join me as we say together, and so it is.
I walk in God in all I do. I walk in God in all that I say.